At 6:15 a.m., October 21st, 2025, the Venezuela crisis has become a proxy contest involving military signaling, economic pressure, and regime survival. What appears on the surface as a confrontation between the United States and the government of Nicholas Maduro has evolved into a proxy arena for great power competition, pulling in the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, and Iran. What began as a regional political and economic crisis has metastasized. It is now defined by a United States maximum pressure campaign, crippling sanctions, and a bounty that climbed from $10 million to $50 million over time on Maduro, whom United States prosecutors have indicted as a narco-trafficker. In response, Caracas has fortified its position. This is not only through defiant rhetoric, such as labeling the United States the imperialists of the North, but also by leveraging deep-seated support from Moscow and Beijing. This analysis will chronologically detail the military, economic, and political vectors that define this confrontation. By 6:30 a.m., our assessment turns to the origins of Russia's significant influence. Moscow's modern engagement was not a sudden intervention. Instead, it was a deliberate, long-term strategic investment that began with arms sales. In 2008, the Russian Federation initiated a series of comprehensive military packages for Venezuela. These were not token sales of surplus equipment. They included thousands of rifles, fleets of combat and transport helicopters, armored vehicles, and advanced fighter jets. Most critically, the sales included the formidable S-300 long-range air defense system. The strategic implication of the S-300 transfer was twofold. It provided Venezuela with a formidable long-range air defense system, complicating United States military planning in the region. More importantly, the system's complexity created a long-term dependency, embedding Russian advisors and technicians within the Venezuelan armed forces. Moscow escalated its power projection later that year, dispatching two Tu-160 Blackjack strategic bombers to Venezuelan soil. The arrival of these nuclear-capable aircraft was an unambiguous strategic message, demonstrating Russia's ability to project power directly into America's traditional sphere of influence, which was a propaganda victory for Caracas and a provocation for Washington. This air presence was complemented by a naval one. Russian warships, including missile-capable vessels, began making regular port calls in Venezuela and conducting joint training exercises with the Venezuelan Navy. This demonstrated Moscow's global maritime reach and made Russian port visits and exercises a regular occurrence. Concurrently, a more clandestine layer of support emerged. Reports and photographic evidence began to surface, indicating the presence of operatives from the Wagner Group, the Kremlin-linked private military company, or PMC. These operatives provided high-level security for key regime figures, trained Venezuelan special forces in counter-protest and urban warfare tactics, and offered Moscow a layer of plausible deniability. Unlike uniformed soldiers, Wagner's presence allowed Russia to deny direct involvement in domestic security crackdowns, while ensuring the regime's stability. Russia's strategy successfully transformed Venezuela into its most significant military partner in Latin America. It established a layered presence, ranging from advanced conventional weapon systems to asymmetric PMC operatives. This presence was designed to deter United States action, secure its own geopolitical interests, and sustain a friendly regime on the United States periphery. At 8:15 a.m., we analyzed the role of the People's Republic of China, which employed a different, though no less impactful, strategy. While Moscow focused on hard power, Beijing prioritized economic integration and technological infrastructure. China's influence became visible through the construction of advanced radar stations. These facilities provide the Maduro regime with enhanced airspace awareness, but their strategic value extends to Beijing. Their positioning allows China to monitor United States air and naval movements throughout the sensitive Caribbean corridor, effectively giving Beijing eyes and ears in the United States' backyard. Beijing's primary strategy was economic, revolving around loans for oil. China advanced billions of dollars to Caracas, essential for maintaining stability, in exchange for long-term oil supplies. This arrangement secured China's energy interests. Additionally, China funded and constructed vital infrastructure, notably surveillance and communication systems, which equipped the Maduro regime with tools for internal monitoring. Chinese firms also obtained significant access to Venezuela's gold and rare earth mining sectors. The critical turning point for this strategy arrived between 2014 and 2016, when global oil prices collapsed, falling from over $100 to around $30 a barrel. This was an economic catastrophe for Venezuela, whose economy was almost entirely dependent on oil exports. As state income evaporated, the country spiraled into hyperinflation and a humanitarian crisis. The oil crash magnified China's leverage exponentially. Venezuela, now bankrupt, was still obligated to repay its massive loans with physical barrels of oil. Beijing's position transformed from that of a lender to that of a primary creditor, with immense control over Venezuela's only significant asset. Unlike Russia's bombers, which could leave, China's influence was locked in through decades-long debts, contracts, and embedded critical infrastructure. By 9:30 a.m., it is essential to contextualize this foreign support within Venezuela's internal political dynamics. The groundwork for the current crisis was laid by Hugo Chavez, who came to power in 1999. During the era of high oil prices, Chavez employed oil diplomacy, using billions in petroleum profits to fund allies across Latin America, including Cuba and Nicaragua. He provided them with subsidized fuel and loans, and in return, he secured their loyalty. This strategy was aimed at building an anti-United States bloc, most visibly within the United Nations, where this coalition of states consistently voted against United States interests. In response, Washington, through bodies like the National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, channeled funding to opposition groups and independent media inside Venezuela, seeking to bolster internal resistance. In 2009, Chavez successfully abolished presidential term limits, a move widely seen as cementing his slide into authoritarian rule by allowing him to remain in power indefinitely. Following his death in 2013, his hand-picked successor, Nicholas Maduro, inherited the presidency, but not his predecessor's charisma or the favorable economic conditions. Maduro's tenure immediately collided with two devastating developments: the aforementioned 2014 oil crash, and concurrently, the United States shale oil boom. This boom helped make the United States a net energy exporter, ending its role as Venezuela's primary customer and effectively destroying Venezuela's main source of leverage and cash flow overnight. As the economy disintegrated, Maduro, lacking Chavez's popular support, turned to force. Opposition figures were jailed, protests were violently suppressed, and elections were widely condemned as fraudulent. Maduro's survival became dependent not on public backing, but on ensuring the loyalty of the military and security apparatus. The shift from Chavez to Maduro marked a transition from populist authoritarianism, fueled by oil wealth, to a more brittle authoritarianism focused purely on survival. The economic collapse, triggered by the end of the oil boom and the loss of the United States market, created the vacuum that foreign powers and illicit economies would rush to fill. At 4:30 p.m., we review the escalation of direct United States-Venezuelan hostility. Washington, viewing the Maduro regime as illegitimate and destabilizing, launched its maximum pressure campaign. In 2017, this campaign crystallized when United States prosecutors formally indicted Maduro and other high-level officials on charges of narco-trafficking and corruption. This was followed by an unprecedented bounty, which eventually rose to $50 million for information leading to his capture. This effectively designated a sitting head of state as a wanted criminal. Simultaneously, the United States imposed crippling sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry, blocking its access to the United States market and prohibiting transactions through the United States financial system. The strategic objective was to sever the regime's last remaining legal income streams, creating a resource scarcity so severe that it would fracture the loyalty of the military and political elites. Maduro's counter-strategy was to pivot entirely to illicit economies. Smuggling networks for gold and drugs, often facilitated by corrupt officials, became a primary source of funds. Sanctioned oil was sold at a deep discount through back channels to buyers willing to defy United States sanctions. This illicit revenue provided just enough cash flow to pay key security forces and maintain a grip on power. In 2019, this confrontation took a bizarre turn with Operation Gideon, a failed amphibious raid by a small group of mercenaries, including 2 former United States Special Forces soldiers. Their plan to land on the coast and trigger a popular uprising failed spectacularly. The force was quickly intercepted, and the captured Americans were paraded on state television. While Washington denied official involvement, the incident was a propaganda coup for Maduro, who used it as concrete proof of United States-backed invasion plots. The maximum pressure campaign successfully crippled the formal Venezuelan economy, but failed to achieve its primary objective of regime change. Maduro proved resilient, insulating his inner circle by leveraging illicit economies and effectively using United States actions, like the failed mercenary raid, to rally nationalist sentiment. By 6 p.m, we assess the most recent developments, which have locked the conflict into a dangerous stalemate. The Maduro regime has sought new, powerful allies. This led to the formation of a triangle of cooperation with Moscow and Tehran. Iran's Quds Force has reportedly become active in Venezuela, assisting a regional drone production effort modeled on Shahed systems. The proliferation of these long-range attack drones, successfully used by Russia in Ukraine, provides Venezuela with a new, potent, asymmetric capability to threaten neighbors and regional infrastructure. This new capability emerged as Venezuela reignited a centuries-old territorial dispute with its eastern neighbor, Guyana. The discovery of massive offshore oil reserves in Guyana's waters prompted Maduro to claim the vast Essequibo region, 2/3 of Guyana, as Venezuelan territory. He deployed troops to the border in a move widely interpreted as a nationalist distraction from the domestic crisis. The West responded directly. The United Kingdom dispatched a warship, HMS Trent, and the United States conducted joint military exercises, including fighter jet flyovers, to deter a Venezuelan invasion. In early 2024, the United States escalated its own pressure, employing classic gunboat diplomacy. A deployment of 7 United States warships, including Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, appeared off the Venezuelan coast. The force was too small for a full-scale invasion, but significantly larger than a counter-narcotics operation. This strategy mirrored Operation Brother Sam from Brazil in 1964, where a United States naval presence was used to signal support for an internal coup. The objective was not to invade, but to force Maduro to expend scarce resources on a full-scale military mobilization, thereby exacerbating internal economic and political stress to a potential breaking point. This pressure culminated around the July 28, 2024 presidential election, which was widely condemned by the United States, EU, and Latin American nations as fraudulent. As protests erupted, Russia and China provided the critical lifelines. At 7:15 p.m., the response from Maduro's allies was swift and decisive. Both Moscow and Beijing immediately recognized Maduro's victory, granting him international legitimacy. On the ground, Wagner-affiliated operatives were reportedly sighted during the suppression of protests, suggesting continued Russian security support. Economically, China provided a crucial escape valve, keeping illicit oil and gold flowing through alternate trade routes and championing Venezuela's inclusion in the BRICS economic bloc, a move designed to break its Western-imposed isolation. Final assessment. As of 8 p.m., Venezuela is a nation locked in a geopolitical vice. The United States continues to apply severe external pressure, utilizing sanctions and a naval presence to force an internal collapse. This strategy is directly counterbalanced by Russia, China, and Iran, which provide the precise military, economic, and diplomatic support necessary for the Maduro regime to survive, while the world's great powers play out their rivalries. The Venezuelan state has been hollowed out, leaving its population trapped in one of the worst economic and humanitarian crises in modern history.